Chapter 33. The Rescue. It was Olga who found out that there would be a harp recital in the school on Sunday evening. Annika lifted her head from the handkerchief she was hemming. A harp? Are you sure? For a moment the cloud in which she lived rolled away, and a door opened to the past. Professor Gertrude was carrying her harp downstairs. She was wearing the black skirt from which Sigrid was always removing small pieces of food, and both she and the harp smelled overpoweringly of lavender water. She's French. She's called Madame la Cruz. A friend of the princess sent her to show us that you can play patriotic things on the harp. Annika bent her head again over her sewing. It was strange how hope could die, even if you hadn't had any hope. Aunt Gertrude seldom left Vienna, and it was impossible to imagine her playing patriotic songs on the harp. It was the patriotic songs that particularly worried Gertrude as she sat in the parlour of the inn going through the plans for Annika's rescue. She transposed a song called Slay and Smite if God Demands It, and another one about a soldier's death on the battlefield, with a refrain about the blood-soaked earth renewed by the warrior's spilt blood. I can't do it any more, she said miserably to her brothers. They're nasty. It doesn't matter. The girls don't know what you play, said Professor Julius. School concerts aren't about music. They're about not having to do homework while they're going on. Stefan thought that the songs Gertrude was going to play would be the least of their worries. The plan, which had been explained to him when he arrived, seemed to be full of holes. He and Gertrude were to unload the harp from the carriage and wheel it into the school. In the hall, they would take the harp out of its case and leave the case in the cloakroom, and ask for help in carrying the instrument up the stairs. In the interval of the concert, Annika would say she felt sick and hurry to the toilet in the downstairs cloakroom. Stefan, who was guarding the harp case, would help her into it, and when the concert resumed and everybody was out of the way, he would carry her out to a closed carriage in which Ellie would be waiting with a change of clothes. Annika would be let out and then driven away to the station. Stefan would take the harp case back to the cloakroom, and at the end of the concert, he and Professor Gertrude would go home with the harp in the usual way. I'll have to have a reason for taking the case out in the interval, said Stefan. He was not a boy who worried easily, but he was worried now. In case anyone sees me. Maybe I would need to fix a new wheel on the bass. We'll just have to improvise, said Professor Julius grandly. Since he was to wait for them at the station, he could afford to be relaxed. After all, it will be dark. Both professors had been determined to return to Vienna and leave Ellie where she was. However much Annika disliked her school, she'd been put there by her mother, and they were not the sort of people who planned cloak and dagger rescues and interfered with authority. But what they had learned from the maid at the inn about pupil number 126 would not go out of their minds. Such pretty hair she had, the maid had said, and Annika too had pretty hair. The professors began to be haunted by the image of Annika lying on the stone flags in pools of her own blood. Once they decided to stay, the professors became very forceful. There was an old encyclopedia in the smoking room of the inn, and when Emil turned the page about Ragnar Harrybreeks, he found that his memory had not been faulty. A beautiful maiden, the daughter of a king, escaped cruel war, being carried to safety, hidden in a harp. Professor Julius had already been to the school when he went to inquire about visiting Annika. It was Emil, therefore, who was called late that afternoon and asked to see the principal, Fräulein von Donner. He wore a black beret pulled down over his forehead and a pair of thick-rimmed glasses, and introduced himself as Henri de Mallarme, a concert impresario who had been sent by the music master of the Duchess of Cerise. The Duchess, as you know, is a close friend of your patron, the Princess Mettenberg. Fraulein von Donner was impressed. She did not usually see people who came to the door, but a messenger from a duchess, especially one who knew their own princess, had to be listened to. Her Grace's concertmaster has a harpist me values greatly, a French woman. She has transposed the patriotic songs of the fatherland for the harp. There is one song, Let Our Enemies Tremble, which has already become famous in aristocratic circles. It is in the key of E flat minor, said Professor Elio in his best French accent. And how does this concern us here at Grossenfluss? Asked Fräulein von Donner, bending forward so that the 3 keys on her chest, the one for the front door, the one for the isolation room, and the one for the cubbyhole which housed the telephone, all clanked together. Her Grace has suggested that this harpist visits a few specially chosen schools to give a concert. Free of charge, of course. Concert is free. It seems important for the pupils to know the instrument that is often played by women can also be used to hearten men for their heroic deeds, even for war. Well, that is true. We are always concerned the girls in our care are trained to serve the fatherland in any way. And music, of course, has often been used as a battle call. Though not, she went on the harp. No, and that is what interests the Duchess. That is why she's sending Madame La Cruz to give recitals to young people. And it just so happens that Madame is going to Schloss. Bernstein play there. And she could stop here, on the way. I take it you have a suitable hall? Yes, of course. Our round room on the first floor is traditionally used for concerts. And all your pupils attend? Of course. Unless they are being punished. Then may I take it that you will receive Madame La Cruz at 6 p.m. on Saturday? So soon? That is the only day she has available, I'm afraid. I will let you have all the arrangements in writing. Now, if I could just see the recital room? Madame La Cruz is particular about the acoustics and about draughts. Draughts are very bad for Alps, you know. Our acoustics are excellent, said Fraulein von Donner. A draught would not be permitted here. But she beckoned her eel-like assistant, Mademoiselle Vincent, who took Emile to the round room on the first floor, which was reached by the wide flight of stone steps leading up from the main hall. He did not catch so much as a glimpse of a single pupil in the silent building. I expect they keep them underground, said Ellie when he told her this. Which left the problem of getting a message through to Annika. She's got to know exactly what to do, said Professor Emile. There was a long silence. Grossenfluss seemed as impenetrable as a castle full of ogres. But even ogres need someone to cook and clean and shop for them. And the maid who was Ellie's special friend had a sister who worked in the school. I'm seeing her this afternoon, she said. It's her day off. I'll ask her if she can help. But it's no good giving her a note. They're all terrified of Fräulein von Donner. You'll have to tell me what she's to say to Annika, and keep it very short. I'm sure she'll do her best. It can't be a promise. The chambermaid managed it. The message she gave Annika, in a hurried whisper, as she was turning down the beds was not very clear. When she received it, Annika realized she would not need to pretend to be sick. She felt sick already. The excitement, dread, and something she had not felt since she came to Grossenfluss. Hope. They had managed to unload the harp case and trundle it towards the door. Professor Gertrude was trembling with nerves, but Stefan was dogged and calm. He had no faith in Professor Emil's plan, and could wish that Ragnar Harrybreeks was at the bottom of the sea. He was going to get Annika out, somehow. He pulled the bell rope, and the porter who came said that they were expected. Stefan looked carefully round the cold, dimly lit entrance hall. The big flight of stairs leading up to the concert room was straight ahead. He could just make out the murmur of the girls' voices through the open door. The cloakrooms were on the right, and to the left was an unlit corridor leading back into the back of the building. It was from the corridor that there now came the tap, tap of a walking stick, and Fraulein von Donner came towards them out of the dark. The glinting keys, the steel-tipped stick, and the badge of the Order of the Closed Fist on the headmistress's collar all filled Stefan with an instant loathing. This was an evil place, run by an evil woman. He realized he would stop at nothing to rescue Annika. Fraulein von Donner greeted Professor Gertrude and ignored Stefan. "The girls are ready," she said. But before they could unpack the harp, the principal's assistant appeared from behind her employer and asked Professor Gertrude if she would care to follow her to the staff room to take off her coat and freshen herself up. Mademoiselle Vincent not only spoke French, she was French. And since she had been told that the harpist was a fellow countrywoman, it was in her own language that she addressed poor Professor Gertrude. The professor had learned French at school, but that was a long time ago. However, there was nothing for it, and she allowed Mademoiselle Vincent to lead her away, leaving Stefan to look after the harp in its case. Upstairs in the concert room, the girls waited. Annika was sitting near the big double doors, which were folded back to allow the entrance of the harp, and she was sitting next to Fraulein Heller. Normally, Annika would do anything not to sit next to a teacher, but if she was to feel sick in the interval and asked to be excused, it would be easier to get permission if she was close by. The maid who had given Annika the hurried message had said only that someone Annika knew was coming to give a concert, but she had mentioned one name, to which Annika clung now like a drowning person clutching a lifebelt. Stefan. The maid had mentioned Stefan's name. Annika closed her eyes, summoning up memories of her childhood friend. Stefan, carrying his brothers on his shoulder. Stefan, reaching a hand out to help her up when she fell. Stefan, climbing a tree to bring down a screaming, panic-stricken child. Stefan was strong. He was true. If there was safety anywhere, it lay with him. Down in the hall, Professor Gertrude had returned with Mademoiselle Vincent, looking very shaken. Emile had had some stupid ideas in his time, but why had he told them she was French? Why not Portuguese, or Finnish, or South African? Mademoiselle Vincent had spoken to her incessantly and rapidly, in the kind of French that is never taught in school, and Gertrude did not feel she had given a convincing performance as Madame Lacruz. "Shall I take the case to the cloakroom now?" asked Stefan. Professor Gertrude nodded and followed him into a tiled alcove with 5 doors discreetly closed. Like everyone else at Grossenfluss, cloakroom and the lavatories would have housed a tribe of giants. Stefan opened the harp case, and Gertrude lifted the instrument out and tenderly removed the silken shawl which covered it. "We shall need help," she said to Fräulein von Donner. "2 girls, reliable ones." "Go and fetch the Messerschmitt twins, Brunhild and Waltraud," ordered the principal. But Mademoiselle Vincent, usually so humble and obedient, did not go upstairs at once. She had been hovering round the headmistress, and now she leaned forward urgently and whispered something in her ear. Fräulein von Donner frowned. "Well, that should be easy to check," she said. She detached the smallest of the keys from the chain round her neck and stumped off down the corridor, while Mademoiselle Vincent went upstairs and returned with the Messerschmitt twins, large, solid little girls, who curtsied and asked what they should do. Gertrude handed the shawl and a sheaf of music to Brunhild, and told Waltraud to hold the pillar of the harp in front. Stefan, at the back, steadied the instrument, prepared to take most of the weight. Slowly, they made their way across the hall and began to ascend the stairs. In the concert room, Annika took a deep breath, and then another. She wasn't imagining it. The smell was real, stealing into her nostrils. Lavender water. Professor Gertrude was here, and it was all she could do not to get up and rush out of the room. At the same time, she felt that if anything went wrong now, and she had to stay in Grossenfluss, she would quite simply die. On the stairs, the harp carriers climbed steadily. "Oh, careful, careful," said Professor Gertrude on every other step. "You've no idea how valuable it is. Gently, slowly." There was no choice about the slowness. The harp was not only weighty, but cumbersome and top-heavy. Just keeping it balanced took all of Stefan's skill. He was noting every obstacle in their path, alert for anything that could damage the instrument. When danger came, it came from below. "Stop, stop!" cried Fräulein von Donner, hurrying to the bottom stairs. "Stop at once! These people are impostors. I have telephoned the princess, and she knows nothing about them, or the Duchess of Cerise." "They are anarchists!" shrieked Mademoiselle Vincent, emerging from behind their mistress. "Assassins! Murderers! Stop them! Stop!" The harp was now 2 stairs from the top, and from the landing in front of the concert room. The cries from below caused utter confusion. Stefan said, "Go on, keep going." And the twin said, No, we must stop." Brunhild dropped the pile of sheet music she was carrying, and Gertrude's foot slipped on "Slay and Smite if God demands it." Go on," urged Professor Gertrude. "Stop them!" came Fräulein von Donner's shriek from below. Her foot was on the bottom step. She heaved herself up and began on the next one. In the concert room, Annika's heart seemed to stop. It wasn't going to work. It was going to be turned back. Stefan and Professor Gertrude were alone now in carrying the harp. The twins, terrified by Fräulein von Donner's shrieks, had let go. There was only 1 stair left to climb. At least, whatever happened, they could carry the harp to safety. They had reached the top. Stefan steadied the instrument, setting it on its pedestal. It was poised at the top of the stairs, like a great golden swan with its carved neck. "Let me," said Stefan, coming round to stand beside Professor Gertrude. He took hold of the pillar of the instrument, and gratefully she relinquished the weight to her trusted helper. "They must be stopped!" yelled the headmistress from down below. Stefan and the harp now blocked the top of the staircase. The principal took 1 more step. No one knew exactly what happened next. It seemed as though Stefan was trying to pull the harp backwards onto the safety of the landing. But the harp did not obey him. Rather, it seemed to move the other way, forward, to the very edge of the flight of stairs. Stefan lunged out to save it, and missed. For a terrifying instant, the instrument seemed to hesitate, as if it were a living creature, fearful of the descent. Then it toppled and fell. It fell slowly at first, then faster and faster still. And as it fell down, it cried. Tragic glissando of sound. There were a series of explosions at the base of the pillar, struck the tread of the marble stairs, and the sounding board began to break. The wooden frame started to crunch. The strings stretched and sprang free, shrieking their outrage. And all the time the harp thundered and rushed and hurtled on. Fraulein von Dommer stood at the bottom of the stairs. She was rooted to the spot, staring upwards as the great juggernaut came down. Her pince-nez glittered in the light of the chandelier, and she raised her stick like the prophet Moses, willing back the waves. But Fraulein von Donner was not Moses. Suddenly, it was too late. The harp crashed down the last few steps, and, in its death throes, it let out a final, reverberating growl of pain. The principal tried to step back and stumbled. The next minute, she lay felled and quite unconscious beneath the splintered instrument. In the concert room, the girls heard the crash and jumped to their feet. A terrible cry came from Mademoiselle Vincent down the hall. "She is dead! Mon Dieu, she is dead!" Come back at once," the teachers ordered the girls who were streaming from the room. No one took any notice. The landing and the stairs filled up with excited girls. Now, Professor Gertrude's hysterical sobbing was added to the pandemonium. "My harp! My harp! I cannot bear it!" The teachers had abandoned the girls and joined the throng, staring in horror at the headmistress, buried beneath wire and splintered wood. The harp had pushed her down the last 2 stairs. She lay, spread-eagled on the stone flags of the hall. One foot stuck out between the strings. It was very still. "A doctor! A doctor!" cried Mademoiselle Vincent. "Quick, quick! A doctor!" Yes, a doctor," wheezed Fraulein Zeeberg. She bent over the headmistress, saw the blood on her forehead, and fainted. The porter came. "If I'm to telephone for the doctor, I'll have to get the key from round her neck," he said. "I'll get it," said Fräulein Heller. She began to move aside the pieces of the splintered harp. No, don't touch her," someone shouted. "She mustn't be moved." "Is she really dead?" the girls asked each other, their faces full of hope. "I'll have to go for the doctor in the carriage," said the porter, and made his way to the front door. Annika had surged out of the concert hall with the other girls. She passed Professor Gertrude, sobbing on the stairs. The professor did not see her, and she ran down. She had to find Stefan. If she could find Stefan, there was still hope. But there was no sign of him in the milling crowd. "Smelling salts! She must have smelling salts!" No, burnt feathers are better." "Iodine!" shouted a tall girl. "There's some in the matron's room." The servants came hurrying from the back. "Gods be praised! The harp has eaten her!" cried one of the scullery maids. "Oh, the blood!" cried Mademoiselle Vincent. "There's so much blood!" Headmistress's foot was still pointing upwards. It had not moved. "We must go to the chapel and pray for her soul," said one of the girls, and she ran off down the corridor, followed by 2 of her friends. In the confusion and noise, there were 2 people who only sought each other. Annika looked for Stefan. Stefan looked for her. There was no sign of him in the hall. The front door was open. Girls were beginning to run out into the dark, and none of the teachers attempted to bring them back. They stood as if hypnotized over the remains of their headmistress. The golden pillar of the harp had fallen on her chest. Could she still be breathing? "Oh, where is the doctor?" cried Madame Vincent. Fräulein Zeeberg groaned, coming round from her faint, and was pulled out of the way by her legs. Annika was getting desperate. If Stefan had gone, if he had already been turned away. Then she remembered she was supposed to say she felt sick and make her way to the cloakroom. When she reached it, there were girls ahead of her, gulping cold water from the tap, talking excitedly. But now a figure stepped out from behind a pillar. "Oh, Stefan!" she sobbed, and he put his arms around her and said, "It's all right, Annika. It's all right." The harp case was where he left it, but Stefan ignored it. Ragnar Hairybrick's day was done. For what was happening in Grossenfluss was a riot, a breakout, as more and more of the girls rushed out into the night, shouting and dancing and vanishing between the trees, and were not pursued. As surely as the walls of Jericho had fallen to Joshua's trumpet, so the gates of Grossenfluss had fallen to the death cries of Professor Gertrude's harp. "Come on," said Stefan, and he took Annika's hand and ran out with her to the carriage where Ellie waited.